Peru, officially the Republic of Peru, is a country in western South America. It is the third largest country in South America. Its territory borders Ecuador, Colombia, Brazil, Bolivia, Chile, and the Pacific Ocean. The country is extremely biodiverse and has been described as a world geography class all its own. From the eastern spine of the Andes, with snow-covered peaks taller than 6,000 meters, you can descend to lowland jungle in less than 50 miles. There is coastal desert, the Andean highlands, and the Amazon rainforest. The driest desert of the world, the Atacama Desert, is located in the south of Peru. On the coast is subtropical with very little rainfall. The Andes Mountains observe a cool to cold climate with rainy summers and a very dry winter. The eastern lowlands present an equatorial climate with hot weather and rain distributed all year long. The population of Peru is estimated at 31.7 million. Peruvian culture is primarily rooted in Amerindian and Spanish traditions, but has also been influenced by various Asian, African, and other European ethnic groups. Spanish is the official language of Peru and is spoken by 84% of the population. In addition, 47 native languages are spoken in the country. 90% of the population identifies as Catholic, with the remaining 10% belonging to Protestant faiths. There is often a mixture of indigenous beliefs and traditions with Catholic rituals. Those that practice the Roman Catholic religion and embrace the tenets of this faith believe that divorce may be indefensible. There is a religious ban on birth control methods, which has resulted in a high birth rate and has led to widespread poverty. Peru is home to several ancient cultures, including the Norte-Chico civilization, the oldest civilization in the Americas, and the Inca Empire. Peru was conquered by the Spanish Empire in the 16th century until it claimed its independence in 1821. This independence was secured in 1824. The country had relatively stable economic and political stability until the War of the Pacific with Chile. This war lasted from 1879 to 1883. During the 20th century, Peru endured armed territorial disputes, social unrest, and internal conflicts. Peru is now classified as upper middle income by the World Bank and is the 39th largest in the world by total GDP. Peru is a representative democratic republic, which is divided into 25 regions. The poverty level is around 25.8%. Main economic activities include mining, manufacturing, agriculture, and fishing. Main exports are copper, gold, zinc, textiles, and fish meal. Currently, South Americans make up approximately 6% of the U.S. population. In 2014, the 5 largest countries of origin were Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Brazil, and Guyana. Peru ranks as 19th among countries from which people migrate to the U.S. The main reasons for Peruvian migration to the U.S. include the political turmoil and economic hardships that were faced in the 1980s. A small but significant wave of immigration occurred in San Francisco during the gold rush and to the Metro Detroit area in the 1950s. However, the majority of Peruvians that have immigrated to the U.S. have arrived since the 90s. Peruvians typically immigrate due to economic reasons, to escape poverty and pursue a better quality of life. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 594,418 U.S. residents currently identify themselves as being of Peruvian origin. The states with the highest Peruvian population are Florida, California, New Jersey, New York, Virginia, Texas, Maryland, Connecticut, Georgia, and Illinois. In Wisconsin, the city that has the highest Peruvian ancestry is Franklin, and that is 1.56%, or 557 people. Illinois is the Midwestern state with the largest population of Peruvian immigrants, with most Peruvians settling in the Chicago area. In Chicago, most Peruvians have located to the northwest side and West Chicago. There have been efforts to recreate Peruvian culture, including celebrations of their National Independence Day, religious celebrations, parades, and soccer clubs. Despite being a relatively new ethnic group to the U.S., the median household income for Peruvians meets the average American household income, and 30% of Peruvians over the age of 25 hold college degrees. Peruvian culture is a very collectivistic culture, which highly values feeling as if you belong to a community and is heavily focused on family. When working with Peruvian clients, it is important to have knowledge of these aspects of their culture. It will most likely be important to incorporate family into sessions. When working with family, keep in mind that in Peruvian culture, there is a separation of roles and expectations for genders. Men are considered the authority figure who leads the family and takes care of all money and expenses. Women are expected to take care of the house and well-being of their family. Women in this culture often suffer social marginalization because of their ethnic, linguistic, and cultural background. Translating this to therapy, if you come from a society that highly values individualism, you may not think as a therapist to include the family, to ask questions about the family, or to interview family members. When practitioners appreciate the importance of a client's family, they can suggest interventions in line with the client's values. For example, instead of suggesting an overworked mother take time for herself, a practitioner may want to emphasize that by resting, the client will have more energy for her family. Clients from Latino cultures have a high dropout rate for therapy, approximately 50%. When establishing rapport, clinicians should know that the perception of internal warmth is very important. If a therapist seems cold, attrition is likely to be high. Perception of warmth can be increased through self-disclosure of minor personal information. In the Peruvian culture, body language and gestures are very expressive, and greetings are often hugs or a kiss on the cheek once a relationship is established. Something else to keep in mind is that Peruvians communicate in close proximity, and it may be seen as offensive to back away. When establishing rapport, a couple of talking points that are viewed positively are family and the Peruvian cuisine. One study that I read found that clients from Latino cultures' satisfaction with a therapist hinged on how well the client felt the therapist understood Latino culture, but not necessarily on the therapist's ethnicity. While their ethnicity does not appear to play a role in client satisfaction, there does seem to be evidence on positive results when the therapist is bilingual. Researchers have found that adult bilingual participants who spoke Spanish as children provided more detail in Spanish than in English when talking about their childhoods, potentially providing more insights to practitioners. Another study found that individual words in bilingual people's first language may have richer meanings for them. After reading an emotion word in Spanish, the participants found it easier to visualize a related scene than when the word was in English. This suggests that Latino clients may more easily tap into their emotions when they talk about them in their first language. One last research article I read was conducted in the 60s and 70s in the Peruvian Amazon and coastal regions that suggests possible bridges between shamanic healings and psychotherapy. Some Peruvian immigrants originate from societies where shamanic healing traditions are still part of historical memory, and in some cases still exist, and they attribute the causality. They project it outward to spirits and evildoers versus inward. They also attribute illness or misfortune to the work of malevolent spirits or other forces in nature. This research suggested that there may be congruences between some shamanic techniques and Western psychotherapy techniques, including behavior modification and cognitive restructuring. It was suggested that therapists can focus on metaphors and storytelling in session, in addition to working on behavior mod and cognitive restructuring. By using historic links with Peruvian culture and the techniques I discussed, therapists can acquire cultural competence that will enable them to effectively reduce mental illness symptoms presented by U.S. Peruvian immigrants in their clinical practice.